There is a particular kind of quiet that settles in the space between wanting and having. It is the silence of a hand hovering over a beautiful object, never quite touching. The stillness of a breath held too long, waiting for permission to exhale. We speak of happiness as something to be pursued, chased, captured. But what if the real story is not in the pursuit, but in the hesitation? What if the deepest fear is not of failure, but of fulfillment? Imagine a garden in full bloom, every flower perfect, every scent intoxicating. And standing at its edge, a person who has tended this garden for years. They know every plant, every season, every secret of the soil, yet they never step inside. They watch others wander through, laughing, breathing in the beauty. But they remain at the threshold, as if an invisible barrier separates them from the very joy they cultivated. This is the psychology of self-denial. Not the denial of suffering, but the denial of happiness. Not the refusal of pain, but the refusal of pleasure. It is a quiet death by inches, a slow turning away from the very things that might heal us. We build beautiful gardens, then stand outside them, convincing ourselves we don't deserve to enter. Or worse, that the garden itself is dangerous, that happiness is a trap, a distraction, a weakness. So we deny ourselves the very medicine that could cure our loneliness. We become experts in longing, but amateurs in receiving. What strange alchemy of the human heart makes joy feel more threatening than sorrow? What hidden logic convinces us that self-denial is a form of strength? And when did we learn that happiness must be earned through suffering? These questions hang in the air like morning mist. They are the unspoken truths that shape our quietest moments, the invisible architecture of our self-imposed limitations. We are all, in some way, standing at the edge of our own gardens, watching the flowers bloom, wondering why we feel safer in the longing than in the having. The paradox of self-denial reveals itself in the quiet spaces of our lives. In the promotion we don't apply for, the compliment we deflect, the love we push away. It appears as strength, as humility, as self-control. But beneath this surface lies something more complex, a deep-seated fear of happiness itself. Psychologists call this phenomenon cherophobia, the irrational fear of being happy. It stems from the belief that happiness will inevitably lead to something bad. That joy is temporary, and its loss will be unbearable. Or worse, that we don't deserve it at all. This fear operates through cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort we feel when our beliefs conflict with reality. If we believe we are fundamentally unworthy, then happiness becomes a threat to our identity. It creates a psychological tension that must be resolved. And so, we resolve it by denying ourselves the very thing that would prove our belief wrong. We maintain the consistency of our self-concept, even when that consistency means suffering. The garden remains untended. The door remains closed. The hand remains withdrawn. Because to open, to tend, to reach, that would require rewriting the story we've told ourselves for years. The story that says we are not meant for happiness, that our role is to serve, to sacrifice, to endure, but never to receive. This narrative often begins in childhood, through attachment patterns that taught us love is conditional, that happiness must be earned through performance, through perfection, through making ourselves small. We learned that joy was dangerous because it could be taken away, that pleasure was fleeting, so better not to taste it at all. These early lessons become the invisible architecture of our adult lives. They shape our choices, our relationships, our very capacity for joy. We become experts in anticipating disappointment. We master the art of preemptive self-denial. Better to refuse the gift than to risk the pain of its loss. Better to stand outside the garden than to risk being asked to leave. This is the setup of self-denial. Not as conscious choice, but as psychological survival strategy. A way to protect ourselves from the vulnerability that happiness requires. Because to be happy is to be open, to be vulnerable, to risk. And for those who learned early that vulnerability leads to pain, this risk feels like certain death. So we choose the slow death of self-denial instead, the quiet erosion of our own capacity for joy. We become ghosts in our own lives, watching from the edges, always preparing for the loss that never comes, because we never allow ourselves to have anything to lose. To understand self-denial, we must venture into the landscape of defense mechanisms. Those psychological strategies we develop to protect ourselves from perceived threats. Denial, avoidance, repression, they all serve the same purpose, to keep us safe from emotional pain. But what happens when the thing we're defending against is happiness itself? When joy becomes the threat? This is where self-denial becomes a sophisticated psychological operation. We don't simply refuse happiness, we construct elaborate justifications for our refusal. We tell ourselves we're being practical, responsible, realistic. That happiness is for other people, people who are stronger, luckier, more deserving. We create cognitive frameworks that make our self-denial seem like wisdom, like we're seeing reality more clearly than those who embrace joy. But this clarity is an illusion. It's the clarity of someone who has trained themselves to see only shadows, who has become so accustomed to darkness that light feels blinding. The psychology of attachment offers another layer of understanding. Our earliest relationships teach us what to expect from the world. If love was conditional, if affection had to be earned through good behavior, through achievement, through making ourselves useful, then we learn that our worth is transactional, that we must prove ourselves worthy of love, of attention, of happiness. And if we can't prove it absolutely, then we don't deserve it at all. This creates what psychologists call an internal working model, a blueprint for how relationships work, for how love works, for how happiness works. If that model says happiness must be earned through suffering, then self-denial becomes the price of admission. We walk through life collecting suffering, like tickets to a show we're afraid to attend, convinced that if we suffer enough, we'll finally deserve to be happy. But the show never starts. The tickets keep piling up, and we remain outside, waiting for permission that never comes. Because the permission can only come from within, from challenging the very internal working model that keeps us trapped. This is where cognitive behavioral principles intersect with depth psychology. Our thoughts create our feelings, which create our behaviors. If we believe we don't deserve happiness, we will feel anxious when happiness approaches, and we will behave in ways that push it away. We might sabotage relationships, avoid opportunities, or engage in behaviors that confirm our unworthiness, all to maintain the consistency of our self-concept, all to avoid the terrifying possibility that we might be wrong about ourselves, that we might actually be worthy of love, of joy, of happiness. This fear is so profound that we would rather live in the certainty of our suffering than risk the uncertainty of our worth. We would rather die by self-denial than face the possibility that we've been denying ourselves for no reason. That the garden was always ours to enter, that the door was never locked, that the only thing standing between us and happiness was our belief that we didn't deserve it. This exploration reveals the tragic irony of self-denial. We think we're protecting ourselves from pain, but we're actually protecting ourselves from healing, from growth, from the very transformation that would set us free. We become so skilled at anticipating disappointment that we create it, so practiced at expecting loss that we ensure it happens. Not because the world is cruel, but because we've learned to be cruel to ourselves. We've internalized the voice that says, "Not yet, not enough, not you." And we've mistaken this voice for wisdom, for reality, for truth. But it's neither wise nor true. It's just familiar. And in the landscape of the human heart, familiarity often feels safer than freedom. There comes a moment in every journey of self-understanding when insight shifts from intellectual to emotional, when the concepts we've been exploring suddenly land in the heart. When we stop thinking about self-denial and start feeling its weight. This is the turning point. The moment when compassion begins to soften the edges of our self-judgment. When we look at the person standing outside the garden and finally see ourselves. Not as flawed or broken, but as scared, as human, as someone who learned early that happiness was dangerous, who developed sophisticated defenses to survive in a world that felt unpredictable, who became an expert in anticipating pain because that felt safer than being surprised by it. This reflection is not about blame. It's about understanding, about tracing the patterns back to their origins, to the child who learned that love was conditional, to the adolescent who discovered that achievement brought approval, but never satisfaction, to the adult who built a life around avoiding disappointment, only to realize they were avoiding life itself. In this reflection, we begin to see self-denial not as a character flaw, but as a coping mechanism, a strategy that once served a purpose, that protected us when we felt vulnerable, that made the world feel more predictable, more manageable. But strategies that served us in childhood often become prisons in adulthood. What once protected us now confines us. What once made us feel safe now makes us feel stuck. This is the bittersweet recognition of growth. The understanding that we must thank our defenses for their service, even as we learn to set them down, even as we learn that we no longer need them, that we are stronger now, more resilient, more capable of handling the vulnerability that happiness requires. This reflection brings a quiet tenderness toward ourselves, a recognition that every act of self-denial was, in its own way, an act of self-protection. A misguided attempt to keep ourselves safe from the pain of loss, from the terror of unworthiness, from the fear that if we let ourselves be happy, we might discover we don't know how to be anything else. That happiness might require us to change, to grow, to become someone new. And change, even positive change, can feel like a kind of death. The death of the familiar, the death of the self we've known, the death of the stories that have defined us. No wonder we hesitate at the garden's edge. No wonder we choose the slow death of self-denial over the sudden death of transformation. But in this reflection, we begin to see another possibility. That transformation doesn't have to be sudden. That we can approach happiness gradually, tentatively, with the same care we would use approaching a wild animal. We can take small steps into the garden. We can touch one flower at a time. We can learn, slowly, that happiness doesn't have to be overwhelming, that it can be gentle, quiet, sustainable, and that we are capable of holding it, of deserving it, of living it. The resolution to self-denial is not a dramatic breakthrough, but a quiet homecoming. A gradual return to the self we've been denying, to the happiness we've been avoiding. It begins with small permissions, with moments of saying yes when we would normally say no, with allowing ourselves to receive what we've only known how to give. It looks like accepting a compliment without deflection, like taking a break without guilt, like pursuing a dream without waiting for permission, like stepping into the garden, one tentative foot at a time. This resolution is not about eradicating all fear of happiness. That fear may always linger in the background, a ghost of past conditioning. The resolution is about learning to coexist with that fear, to acknowledge its presence without letting it dictate our choices, to understand that fear and happiness can occupy the same space, that we can be afraid and still move forward, still reach for joy, still allow ourselves to receive. The psychology of self-denial teaches us that we are not broken, but conditioned, not flawed, but learned. And what has been learned can be unlearned. What has been conditioned can be reconditioned. This is the work of a lifetime, not to achieve perfect happiness, but to remove the barriers we've built against it, to dismantle, piece by piece, the architecture of our own limitations, to rediscover the capacity for joy that was always there, waiting beneath the layers of self-protection. The final insight is this: self-denial was never about strength. It was about fear disguised as wisdom, about control masquerading as virtue. True strength lies in vulnerability, in the courage to want, to desire, to receive, to allow ourselves to be happy, even when every cell in our body screams that it's dangerous, even when every voice from our past warns us to be careful, to be small, to be safe. The resolution, then, is not an ending, but a beginning. The beginning of a new relationship with ourselves. One based not on earning, but on receiving. Not on proving, but on being. Not on self-denial, but on self-compassion. The garden was always there. The door was never locked. The only thing standing between us and happiness was our belief that we needed permission to enter. And the only person who could grant that permission was the one we've been denying all along: ourselves.